Hi, Adam. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
No problem.
I'm going to read a bit of an intro first, and then you're going to tell us what it is that you do.
Okay.
So, overview of what Adam is up to. When you dive the depths of over 240 feet or 70 metres in the open ocean, you need to have the skill of controlling your mind before and during your descent, and to have strategies to overcome any obstacles that may present themselves. Adam Sellars is the director of the Pressure Project, an Australian freediving representative, qualified freediver instructor, and one of the deepest divers in the world, and can hold his breath for up to 5.5 minutes. That blows me away. Adam is a qualified teacher of mindfulness meditation and advanced visualization, and teaches these skills in competition and business. So that's a very brief introduction, and over to you, Adam, and tell us more.
Thank you. I thought it was quite a good introduction. Thank you. Yeah, so my name's Adam Sellars. I founded this Pressure Project about between 12 and 18 months ago. And it was really a culmination in a few life events, I suppose. One was my struggle with my own mental illness. In a way, I struggled with anxiety for a lot of years. And then I had a bout of really kind of bad depression at one point as well. So that was one of the life events that kind of led me down this path. The second was discovering this sport of freediving, and discovering this sport of freediving kind of happened at a similar point at when I was struggling with some mental illness. And I just drew a few parallels there, and really what it was I believe, and what I started to hypothesize was that my struggles were more so my inability to deal with the pressures of life. It wasn't necessarily what people were telling me or doctors were saying, which was, you know, it's this imbalance, and it was just something that was destined to happen to me, because I didn't really have anyone in my family either. That some people were saying it was hereditary, some people were saying, oh, it's, you know, it gets passed down through generations. But really what I found was it was my inability to deal with the pressures of life. And so in a way, I kind of hypothesized that this is kind of why people do struggle with say, anxiety is not being able to cope with the pressures of a society that says we have to be a certain way, our parents that say we have to be a certain way, even down to this new, you know, the social media, which, you know, keeping up with the Joneses used to be next door. You'd look across and they've got a new car and you go, oh, I want a new car. Now it's keeping up with your news feed. People feel like, oh, everyone's going away on holidays and achieving this and achieving that. And it's kind of a bit of a fake world in a way, where people are always posting the fantastic things they're doing, and people get anxiety literally over, well, I'm here, they're doing this, what's wrong with me, and I haven't achieved. So basically it was the coming together for me of those two worlds. And with freediving, I suppose I'll give you a bit of a story as to how I came across freediving. And the lessons from the deep, which you'll see on here. But actually what I might do first is I'll play a little video that'll give you some idea of what the sport of freediving is and what we go through. So we'll put that on now. Okay. So that's a sport, believe it or not.
I'm holding my breath.
So I'll just quickly explain what that is. That was my dive at the World Championships last year, just 72 meters. So to begin with, you get kind of 5 minutes to lay on the surface there, holding the line, and you've just got to get to a point where you're not thinking about what's coming next. You're not thinking about how far down you're about to go. You're not thinking that you've got to hold your breath for a long time. You've just got to get yourself to a point where you can control your emotions and relax your heart rate in preparation for this dive. And then obviously they count you down, the 5 minutes is up, you then turn, you go under. So for the first, say, 20 odd meters, you're fighting against positive buoyancy because you're filling your lungs right up. And so you're positively buoyant. So you've got to kick against that for the first part of the dive. Then you get to a point of negative buoyancy. So your lungs go from being inflated like this, but because of the pressure that's exerted on you, they start to compress and compress and compress, and they go to about the size of your fist. Wow. So you become negatively buoyant, which you would have seen at some point there. I just started to drop. I just started to, they call it free fall or sink phase. Some people liken it to kind of flying just the other direction. So you get to the bottom plate and you have to rip off a tag, which has Velcro on it, and you can either Velcro it or just hang on to it. So you then have to fight all this negative buoyancy. So now all of a sudden you're at the bottom and you're extremely heavy, and you've got to kick all that weight back up. So you don't really become positively buoyant until about 5 meters from the surface then. So you got to kick all the way up, you get to the surface, you have to hold the line, keep your airways above the water. You've got to go through a series of taking any facial equipment off. You have to signal first to the judges and then say, I'm okay. If you go, I'm okay, it doesn't count. If your airways touch the water, it doesn't count. So it's a kind of a tough sport on the competitors. But I suppose what I found from freediving and why I incorporate freediving in how I help people is we have a brain that is incredibly good at trying to keep us alive. Yeah. At the drop of a hat, our brain will say, oh, we're in danger. Okay. Especially when we're about to dive into the ocean, we're being affected by all this pressure, we're holding our breath. The back of our brain, our fight and flight center says, hey, Adam, we don't like this. You know, we're trying to keep you alive, champion. And so what happens is you've got to kind of have mechanisms to, you can't completely switch it off, but you kind of make friends with it in a way. And if you're sitting, so in terms of the way that I think about it, and, you know, when I'm laying there for the 5 minutes thinking, and look, thoughts do come up, okay? They're like, have I trained enough for this? Did I eat the right amount of breakfast this morning? Did I do the right breathing? And am I in the state that I need to be for this particular dive? All those thoughts come up. But I just have my own strategies, which one is breathing. And the other is because I understand what's going on in the brain, I know it's trying to keep me alive and it's throwing all these messages. I kind of call it like the nana in my brain. And so, you know, everyone's probably got a nana or at some point had a nana. And, you know, when you went running outside in the mud, they go, oh, be careful, don't slip over. Yeah. So it was this constant like worrying, which is kind of what anxiety is really. It's this constant worrying about what's coming up in the future. And really, I kind of like to think of it more as it's more like fear. You know, anxiety, you could almost rename it and just go, it's fear. That's what it is. It's fear of what's coming. So I have two techniques when I'm laying in the water there. One is I go, and I literally picture my nana. I say, thanks, nana, but I've got this. It's going to be okay. So I kind of give this center of my brain, it's like I picture my nana and I smile. Yeah. And the other one is sometimes I picture the poo emoji, which is an emoji that you can use on your phone. And it is literally like this whipped cream. Some people think it's ice cream, but like the poo emoji that has 2 eyes and a big smiley face. And I picture that because I use it all the time with people. I send it to them. And it makes me smile. So like, you know, the judges and the other competitors and the spectators go, oh, I see you just before you dive sometimes and you're smiling. And I'm like, yeah, because I picture something that makes me smile, or I talk to my nana and say, thanks, that's okay, but I've done this before and I'll do it again. That makes me smile, which signals to my body and I suppose coming from my brain that, hey, I actually like this. I'm okay with this. Whereas what I find is a lot of people in real life or in sports, in particular in this case, they're so serious and they're all tense and they're kind of, and that signals that to their body and brain that they're not comfortable with this situation. And so those kind of chemicals and stuff run rampant, and then all of a sudden you get some people, especially with this freediving, who are deeper divers than me, but turn early because they're just in a stress state.
Yeah.
I suppose this is part of the whole part and parcel with this whole thing is stress is a killer. And what anxiety and what depression and all these things, all this future thinking or past thinking does is create stress, which releases the drug cortisol, which quite literally breaks down our brains. And it's just not good for our I suppose our health. We have two systems, and if you're not aware of the two systems, one is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest, which is like, oh, this is great. We love this space. We're sitting on the couch. We're watching footy, cricket, or whatever it might be, knitting, whatever your go is. And then we have this sympathetic nervous system, which is our stress system, which is, if anyone's ever done some public speaking, you'll have felt this dry mouth, heart rates through the roof. Digestion literally basically stops. So a lot of people go, oh, you know, I exercise and I have a good diet, but I can never lose weight. Well, of course, you live in your stress system consistently. So you don't digest your food properly.
Yeah.
So the thing with being able to get out of that sympathetic or the stress system, you know, basically what we've found is that about 3 to 5 minutes of closing your eyes down and just simply breathing, but breathing properly, can get you from your sympathetic to your parasympathetic nervous system. So yeah, it's yeah, that's right. So one of the things with freediving in particular, and with the pressure project that we work with, is firstly teaching people how to breathe properly. We do it all day, every day, but believe it or not, we're not all that great at breathing. So when we're adolescent, or when we're babies, we start out life belly breathing, basically. And this chest breathing or this stress breathing is a learnt phenomenon. We basically learn how to breathe badly. And generally speaking, what they're starting to say is that it's due to this almost an adult affliction, I suppose, or it's starting a lot earlier now. Teenagers are starting to get anxiety and stuff at a really early age. But we learn this kind of chest breathing. So one of the things we teach at the Pressure Project now is simply getting back to a formula that relaxes the body. Some people don't ever get into that parasympathetic nervous system or breathe properly until they sleep. It's the only time they kind of get in that rest and digest system. So firstly, what we kind of do is we teach people to isolate their breathing, and there's different parts to a breath. So when I'm about to do a free dive, I just simply go to my belly breathing, which is just as simple as everything else is switched off and just your belly is inflating and deflating. And I double my exhale, because you're only ever working really when you're breathing, when you inhale. Intercostals, your diaphragm is working to bring the air in and lift your lungs up. When you exhale, it's like a balloon. You have to work to blow it up. When you exhale, the pressure from the outside just simply pushes that air out like a balloon, like your lungs. Yeah. So we basically coach a kind of, it's anywhere from say 3 seconds in, 6 seconds out, 4 seconds in, 8 seconds out. So to begin with, I just simply am belly breathing. So it's like inflating a balloon in your stomach. Looks a little like this. So that's a simple belly breath where we just really work on the relaxation on the out breath and relax our shoulders through it. So I do that before a dive, and even in like a corporate, I used to work in corporate world. I would just take myself away for 5 minutes, sit down with good posture because that signals that I'm confident, and close my eyes, and I would just do up to 5 minutes of just belly breathing, counting in, counting out. And by the end of it, I was back in my parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
And I had the ability to then respond to my outside environment rather than react. And this is where I think a lot of people get themselves in that stress state is, you know, there's a term that's been coined that amygdala hijacking, which is the amygdala, which is all tied up with your kind of limbic system and fight and flight. It shoots off these responses and it literally hijacks the front of your brain, which is your prefrontal cortex, which is logic and problem solving and just being calm, I suppose, and being able to sort things through. So instead, we literally get hijacked and someone says something that we don't like and we just blow our stack. You know, it's like some people who are like beautiful flowers in real life can become absolute raving lunatics in the traffic, right? Like someone cuts them off and they are just out of control with just aggression and anger. And then you just think, where does that come from? They're being hijacked. So being able to get back to that parasympathetic and give things space as well is the other thing, is just giving things space. Like my old boss used to be that reactive person, and sometimes he would have a go at me and I would just sit there and think about it, breathe, and he would just say something. And I'd say, well, I'm just giving it space. I'm just thinking about it. So what's there to think about? I'm like, well, you just had a bit of a go at me and I'm just processing it. And actually what I might do is I'm going to go away for 5 minutes. I'll come back and I'll chat to you. And he kind of, okay. And it would completely disarm him.
Brilliant strategy.
Yeah. And then we go back.
Pause. Yeah.
And then I'd come back in 5 minutes and he'd be all calmed down. And he's like, look, I've had time to think. And he'd start talking. I've had time to think. And I overreacted. I'm sorry. I'm like, no, that's okay. You had some valid points. You're right. I should have got that little task done earlier. You're right. But we'd have this conversation that was all, whereas the Adam before all of this, before I learned all of this, would just react back. Yeah. And then there'd be a heated argument. We wouldn't talk to each other for a day.
Yeah.
So breathing's really powerful for me. And then a full breath just before I'm about to dive, and this is the power of breath as well, is being able to isolate breathing. Firstly, I start with stomach, which gives room for the lungs to expand. I'm not actually putting air in my stomach. You can only ever put air in your lungs. But by inflating the stomach first, it opens up that area so the lungs can expand to their full capacity. It's a bit of a fallacy. They used to, like, people say to me, oh, you're a freediver, you must have really big lungs. And I say, nah, pretty standard. And they go, oh, no, they must be really big. Nah, pretty standard. I'm just more flexible in this region. I work on it more. Okay, so a full breath is, I go stomach first, intercostal muscles, then up into the chest. And you'll see just how much more air I can pack into. When I ask most people in my courses to do a breath hold, like hold your breath. And everyone can do this exercise. You could try right now. You could pause this and then go, I'm going to try holding my breath. Right? They go like this. They hold all this tension up here. They only breathe from the chest. And the norm's about a minute. Okay? So a full breath looks a little bit like this. Belly, intercostals, then chest. So it's... So it takes a long time for me to exhale that because there's a lot in there. So there's a lot we don't know about. Sorry?
It made it really clear to watch the different stages. We can all learn that, hey?
And that's basically, I mean, I've had people in my freediving courses go from 30 seconds in the classroom to 3-minute breath holds once we learn all the techniques and not only the physical, but the mental techniques. So, yeah, it's quite amazing. It's basically really what it is just instilling some belief in the students that we're built for this, because we really are actually built for this through adaptation or through, evolution. They say we went back to the ocean. So what happens in our bodies when we dive in the ocean emulates what happens in dolphin and whales' bodies, the same physical responses. We're actually built for it, but most people don't believe this. So once I instill the belief in them and then give them the mental techniques, most people absolutely surprise themselves.
Yeah.
So it's quite amazing to see people go from one point to the next. And then when you look at, so just quickly, when you look, so when I take people out into the ocean, we have a free dive buoy at the top, which is just a big float.
Yeah.
There's a line attached to the bottom, which goes down to what's called a bottom plate. Don't know whether you can see that. Can you see that? Yep. A big bottom plate, which has some weight here so that it stays in place. Now, the biggest thing that I find with my students is I say to them, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to do our breathe up at the surface, which is belly breathing. Then you take your final breath, your nice big breath, belly, intercostals, chest. Then when you descend, what I want you to focus on is just the line, okay? So they're now upside down. Now upside down. Diving down the line. Now they have 3 options of where they can look. They can look at the bottom plate. They can look at where they've just come from. Or they can look at the line, which is actually better for their equalization too. It's much easier because their neck's relaxed. They're not going like this. They're not going like that. Okay. But where do you think most people look?
Future on the bottom.
So their eyes are looking down here because society, school, parents, mentors, whomever, peers, have always instilled in us that we're here, but you want to be there, right? So we're trained like this. So all of my students, and I say to them, what will happen is you will look at the bottom plate. Even though I tell them this is the best way, look at the line, what they do is they look at the bottom plate every time in the beginning. Then I say to them, okay, and they might get to this point before the anxiety kicks in, and then they turn around, they go back up.
Yeah.
Like a lady that I had who's a school teacher. I had her on my course about 2 weeks ago. Same thing, she's looking at the bottom. She's turning about here. We go up and I say to her, okay, I'm going to be with you the whole way. I'm going to be on this side. Okay. I just simply want you to look at my eyes or the line. Okay. And if you trust me and you just look at that, the bottom plate will just appear. I promise you. And she never thought she could get to this plate. And so we both descend. She looks at me. I'm going like this. I'm saying, equalize. We're good. We're good. She's kicking down. She's looking at me. She goes to look up and I'm like, and I can make this noise underwater, which is called the groper noise, which is, and you can hear it. Sound travels underwater like you wouldn't believe. You can hear a whale a kilometre away. And so she's straight back. She's in that present moment with me, line. I'm on the other side. Next minute, the plate appears and she goes, oh, and she grabs it. Because when you grab it, your legs flick over. And then she's down here. Now her legs are facing this way. She's ready to come back up. And she's just holding on. She says to herself, like, I like it here.
Yeah.
So she just sits there. Whereas before she was turning here and barreling back up. And so I'm on the other side here going, I like it here too. This is why I do this, right? And then eventually I say, okay, it's time to go back up. You've still got another 20 meters to go.
Yeah.
Right? So the fantastic thing about this underwater world as well is that it's a world that we still have not tamed. Like, it's still uniquely wild. Every time I jump in there, there's something new. There's some new fish I haven't seen, stingray, shark, whatever it is. And we haven't tamed it. We haven't built underwater cities. Whereas, you know, you go to Africa these days and you're in a car in a national park and you're safe.
Yeah.
And as mammals, we like to be safe.
Yeah.
And the trick is to be comfortable with an environment that's not necessarily yours. And that's why I use a lot of the freediving and the pressure project as a kind of a parallel. So.
Oh, it's fantastic. You've inspired me. I'm going to breathe more deeply.
But yeah, I mean, that's, you know, when I have students, the other thing is when I have students and we go through the breathing side. So, I mean, it'll take too long to do it here, but, you know, it's about 45 minutes of teaching them how to breathe properly.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the session, what I say to them is, I say, okay, we're all just going to lay down in this park and we're going to figure out what our breathe up is. Okay, so a breathe up is what you do at the surface just before you go. And I say to them, now the average is about 3 seconds in, 6 seconds out, or 4 seconds in, 8 seconds out. But, you know, if you feel like you need more, you can do 5 and 10, that's fine. But I say for the next 5 minutes, you're just going to lay down there and you're going to figure out at what point you're most comfortable. And then once you get to that point, just keep going until I tell you to come back to earth. Yeah. And they all do. They lay down and you see them, they're trying to figure it out. And then you see the moment they figure it out and then they just, okay. And then let's say, for example, they're 4 and 8. So they just sit there for, say, the next 3 or 4 minutes, 4 seconds in, 8 seconds out. And that's just what they're doing, because I told them to do it and I didn't label it. I just said, I need you to find out where your breathe up is. Yeah. Now, when they finish, they come back to and they're like, oh man, I've never felt so calm in the middle of the day. This is amazing. Oh. And then I say, okay, great. Where was everyone's breathe up? 3 and 6. Oh, fantastic. That's your breathe up. Keep that. 4 and 8. Cool. 5 and 10. Sweet. Excellent. Beautiful, beautiful. Then I say, what you just did for the last 5 minutes is mindfulness meditation. Yeah. And they kind of look at each other and go like, oh. And I say, you're welcome. Okay? But if I'd have started off the breathing with, hey guys, we're about to do meditation, they start to go to these preconceived ideas of what meditation is, which is like, oh, we have to sit in a cave for 10 years and butterflies going around our head and be spiritually enlightened, which is not the case. You know? Meditation came from the yoga world and it was a real spiritual thing. But mindfulness meditation was born from simply a Western doctor, I can never remember his name, and he coined the term mindfulness to bring it into Western culture. And so, but when you strip it right back and you go back to the yoga world, what they believed is we had a monkey mind, which is like, we've got a monkey in there and it's just running around going, banana, banana, banana. And most people will be able to kind of relate to this, right? So that 5 minutes of breathing, what we did was mindfulness, but it's just distracting that monkey away for 5 minutes, which is why they feel revitalized. And so if we can live a life where we consistently have the ability to be mindful and at moments when we need it, distract the monkey away, then we'll be able to control these urges that want to send us into this stress system, which at the end of the day makes you old, makes you fat, and will eventually generally kill you.
That's motivation.
That's the upside of stress. But look, the good thing is that it's not too late. You have the ability to be able to move yourself out of that stress system. And it's something that I never had the ability to do. I would sit with scenarios and situations and they literally would make me sick. Yeah. I would get to the point where there was so much stress. and so much future thinking more so. That's where my anxiety stemmed from.
Yeah.
And the problem is, and I know I've taken up a lot of time, but just quickly, is the problem is, and I talk about this quite a bit, is that the brain cannot distinguish the difference between a real threat to our life and a perceived one.
Yeah.
Okay. So a real threat to our life, and everyone uses the saber-toothed tiger, right? It hasn't been here for a very long time, but we all use it, right? A real threat back in the day was a saber-toothed tiger that could actually kill us. So, you know, today, for example, if I were to be diving and I saw a great white, well, there is a very slim chance, but there is still a chance that it may want to eat me, right? So that's a very real threat. My brain would send off all these signals that would flood my legs mainly, but the extremities with blood, so that I couldn't run, but I could swim like buggery. The problem is that our brains have so that particular stress we're adaptive to. Like once I get on the boat, oh God, okay, I'm safe now. After let's say an hour, all of that stuff would be subsiding out of my body and I would turn back to that kind of state of homeostasis, I think they call it, or something like that.
Yeah.
The problem is now what we do is we have the same responses to things like can't afford the rent or mortgage. Boss is riding me. Yeah, the boss is really riding me. And I'm feeling all this pressure, right? You know, my partner, we're not getting along real well. All these little stresses, or I've got a business now and it's not doing so well and I want it to be here, but it's not here and it's here still, but I need it to be there and it may never get there. So our brains still see that as a threat. And whilst it's not as intense as seeing a great white, for example, it's more consistent. So it just, that loop just plays over and over and over and over, releasing cortisol and all these stress drugs into our system. And then we wonder why we can't cope and everything just comes down on top of us and we've too much pressure and we fold.
Yeah.
So
it's very cumulative. You get to not notice it after a while.
That's right. And then we live in our sympathetic nervous system, and like quite literally sympathetic nervous system, the stress system. I mean, I know it was very harsh, but it literally makes you older, makes you fatter. And quite often, well, 85% they say of all illnesses stem from stress.
Absolutely. I know that figure too. Yeah.
The doctor says, this is it. This is the diagnosis. Yeah. But they don't tell you that, oh, it's just been from the last 20 years of stressing about ridiculous things that have led you to this disease. They just go, let's go and zap your body for a bit. But, you know, it's one of those things. If you know, there's something like, I remember when I did my meditation course, he said something like there's 2,440 minutes in a day. Just give yourself 20 of meditation. I mean, you know, I know I said it makes you old, but I mean, even for you ladies out there, there's some science now behind the fact that it is anti-aging. There's these things in your cells. I think they're called telomeres or something along those lines. I'm not actually that sciencey, but having the ability to do meditation, and when you do consistent meditation, what happens is it crosses over to your everyday life. Because you get this continuity of 20 minutes being able to process thoughts and being able to get into that calm state that when something happens in your real life, your brain goes, hey, I'm okay with this. I can give this space because I'm used to giving things space in my 20 minutes a day. And you deal with things better in life. So anti-aging.
Too true. That doesn't convince everyone. What will?
No more creams. So even for athletes out there, people, the athletes, but I think, you know, and men aren't exempt from this. Men are, you know, what I found with a lot of my friends when I talk to them, is they all of a sudden come out and go, you know what, I've never spoken about this, but I really struggle with depression, or I really struggle with anxiety. I don't like going into public spaces. You know, I've had one of my friends say that, I don't like going into public spaces. I get anxiety, and I have anxiety attacks, and they open up about it. But generally speaking, most men, you know, as a young boy, and I went through it. I'm from right up in North Queensland, and we got to be bred to be tough. My dad thinks I chain myself to trees because I've got a man bun, and you know, I talk about all these things that he doesn't really understand. I do freediving. He thinks I'm a bit out there. But you know, when I fell over, he would just go, "Get up, mate. Dust yourself off. Walk it off."
Yeah.
When he then had my little sister, you know, it's all like, "Oh, little darling, you know, oh, are you okay? You want me to kiss it better?" So us men, we just get this kind of, you know, it is kind of weak to speak, you know, like, just dust yourself off. I don't know what's going on up here. I don't like it. I can't sleep. I can't operate, but I'll get through it, dust it off. And unfortunately, you know, the reason, you know, it's the reason why we have such a high suicide rate is because they just go, you know what, I can't talk about it. I don't know what's going on, but I can't live with this. So.
Yeah. Too right. Yeah, it's reaching out, connecting, talking about it. Lifeline is an organisation I used to work for, so they're brilliant too in Australia.
Yeah, yeah.
Connecting with friends or professionals anyway.
Yeah, and you know, part of the, you know, with the freediving as well is that I find a lot of my friends, a lot of guys have gone, you know, when I say to them, hey, you know, I could actually help the way you think, but then you can also do a bit of a sport and recreation. You can learn a new skill. Yeah. I go, oh yeah, a new sport or recreation, I can do that. Yeah. But they learn things like, look at the line.
Yep.
Stay present.
Yeah.
If you look down here, quite often you don't make it.
Yeah.
And if you get here and you look up there and you go, wow, that's a long way up. Once again, it can bring up a bit of that anxiety. So it's just a really good parallel for, and I see it every time I do a course. I just go, I can see everything that's going wrong in society in this recreation.
Yeah, microcosm.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah. So it's the meditation, the freediving is all a bit of a vehicle for me into helping people. So
wonderful, Adam. Thank you so much. You've been so generous with your true self.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And there'll be links for people to follow, connect with you more.
Awesome. Fantastic. Look forward to it.